All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome. We're very excited to have you. This is the most registered single webinar we've ever had. So Phil has brought in quite the crowd. So we're very excited. I am pleased to introduce Phil Edwards to everyone today, though I'm pretty sure most people know of or about him. Phil Edwards is the founder, coach, and coach developer for Path Coaching Company, whose motto is driven by you, coached by Path. Phil was the USOPC Coach of the Year in 2021 for his work supporting coaches across the United States.
They're recording it.
A former USA national coach and current technical director for Rutgers. Phil has somebody's sound is on. Phil has over 20 years of coaching experience working at all levels of sport in the USA, the UK, and South Africa. So join us for today's topic of indoor invasion, developing a principles of play approach. I'm very excited to have Phil here. Phil, take it away.
Well, awesome. Thank you, Becca, and welcome everyone to today's indoor invasion workshop. It is a workshop in the true sense, so this won't be all pushed from my end. Well, there's video in the presentation. We all know how presentations go when there's video in there. That can be a movable feast, but the plan is to be roughly 50-50 in terms of content pushed from my end, and then some discussion and conversation amongst yourselves in breakout rooms, as well as we explore this idea of developing a principle of play approach. So the aim of today's workshop is to support you to be able to start drafting your principles of play for the first time, if you don't currently have them, or if you do have them set already, provide a useful point in time to reflect upon or review your existing principles, maybe through a different lens or with some new information. We shall see. All the content from today will be shared afterwards. Becca will be sharing the call itself by the member portal. And I'll have a player dashboard ready with with all the clips that are shared, plus some other content, including some full indoor games from the recent European Championships that you'll be able to download off the dashboard and use yourselves with your teams as well. As usual, as we go through this, feel free to ask questions at any time. Relatively large group, so feel free to put stuff in the chat. I'll keep that open so we can keep an eye on it. And Becca, if I could ask you if you see anything come in the chat that I missed, just
absolutely
let me know and we can get to it. But yeah, great to see as a starting point with our little poll there. We've got about as expected, I suppose, about a 50-50 split between those who coach indoor, the full version of indoor versus a kind of modified version, maybe outdoor indoor, sometimes we see in the college environment. So a 50-50 split between those who play indoor, who coach indoor, and those who do not coach indoor. Whilst the lens we're going to explore invasion games through today is the indoor game, this is hopefully directly applicable to both indoor and outdoor. At least that's the argument at the heart of this session that we'll get into. So, like Becca said, I'm the owner of Path Coaching Company alongside my work at Rutgers as the technical director. At Path, we aim to answer this question. We inherently believe in the power of coaching, otherwise we wouldn't do what we do, but in which case, who is coaching the coach? And we aim to do that by providing coaches with individualized one-on-one support alongside educational experiences and other resources as well. So get in touch at the end if you're interested in finding out more about that. But let's start, like any good workshop, with somewhat of a provocative statement. This was from Adi Pasakaronda, who is for those who don't know, is currently the US men's assistant coach for the indoor program, was previously the German women's coach, and is regarded as one of the leading experts in the indoor game in the world. This is how he started the indoor lessons from the top workshop series we had with Path and Player Dash about a month ago. This was his starting statement. Indoor hockey does not equal outdoor hockey in a gym. Indoor hockey does not equal outdoor hockey in a gym. I believe this to be true, but that's also a bit like saying field hockey does not equal ice hockey. They're different games, but clearly indoor hockey is more complementary to our outdoor version than, say, playing ice hockey. There are more similarities than there are differences, and the two can be really useful and powerful development tools alongside each other, especially when we look at the position of indoor in the US, that even relative to the rest of the world, we have a massive indoor season. Our club indoor season is huge compared to many countries in the world in terms of the amount of time we spend on the court. But the position of that indoor game is still
time for lunch
as a development tool for the outdoor game. And of course, we may we have a choice at some point in the year. Most of us live in a part of the country where we can't get on the field, it's frozen, whatever, we have to go inside, we have to seek an alternative. And many of us choose, of course, to play a modified version of indoor. We play outdoor, indoors, and maybe no boards, still using outdoor sticks, outdoor skills, etc., etc. And so the rest of us in college, maybe, or some of us choose to play the full indoor version. So we get the boards out, we play with indoor rules, and we prepare, as we have done at Rutgers. We're at the end of our 7-week indoor season as we head to the Big Apple indoor tournament this weekend. So regardless of where indoor sits, regardless of how much we agree with this statement, how can we make sure that indoor is the most impactful development experience for the players that we're working with, knowing that for pretty much all of us, the outdoor version is the kind of predominant version of the game that we want to play. So today's session is linked to answering that question. And I would start really from the off here, say, or reiterate that point that this will be useful, I hope, regardless of whether you coach indoor or not. This is not intended to be a kind of technical indoor session with indoor specific tactics and strategies and development like that. If you're interested in that area and you haven't done so already, check out the indoor lessons from the top workshop. I'll share the link to that at the end. That's the one where Addy, Jason Mulder, the US men's national team head coach, and Tina Bachmann, the legend from Germany, share their insights on coaching the indoor game. So I know some of you have heard me talk about fish tanks before. We might say that indoor hockey is a fish tank of the outdoor game. That is to say, if we were to row out to the middle of a lake that represents the outdoor game, we'd grab a fish tank, we'd dip it in there and pull it back up. What we have in that fish tank will broadly represent the outside, the bigger game, the outdoor game. Everything at the foundations are the same. But in certain ways, it may also exaggerate or eliminate other elements of the game. So these are the core foundations of teaching games for understanding, this idea of representation and exaggeration within our practice design. So if we treat indoor as a development tool for outdoor, these two things at the core, it represents the game of outdoor hockey in a broad brushstroke way, but it also exaggerates certain elements of the game. For example, the rule that ensures the ball has to stay on the ground exaggerates the importance of both exploiting and defending the left foot area, which we'll talk about in a little bit more detail later. And of course, by its very nature, the indoor game supports the development of certain technical, physical, and psychological skills, mainly due to the fact that things are put under pressure, either by the rules, you can't lift it, or through the space and your proximity to other defenders and lack of room for maneuver as such. So the title of this webinar today comes from this idea that field hockey, whether we're talking about indoor or outdoor, is an invasion game. So this classic textbook, you can download the PDF online for free. It's Rethinking Games Teaching. This is where teaching games for understanding as a methodology comes from. But they came up with this idea of games classifications. I know if you've done your level 1 USA field hockey coaching course recently, this is now part of that as well. But they have these broad buckets of exercises or activities and games, the net and war games, target games, striking and fielding games, and of course, invasion games. The intent behind this was to make sure that gym teachers provided their students, their pupils, with the opportunities to sample a range of sports across these buckets, and they didn't just play those that fall in the invasion games, but they played other games like tennis, squash, racquetball, archery, baseball, etc., as well, that would fit into those other categories. So field hockey is, as we imagine, an invasion game. The intent of the game is to invade our opponent's territory. So other invasion games include sports like soccer, lacrosse, football of the American variety, rugby. All of those are invasion games, and they have certain commonalities within them. And these commonalities become the starting point for our core principles that guide these sports. So when we talk about these principles today, we're not just picking them out of thin air and saying, well, we think this is a good idea, but we're going back to the foundations and saying, what is it about these sports, about invasion games, that we're actually trying to do? What are the core principles? So for all invasion games, these are the principles that they started to define, and this is what made them invasion games. So with possession of the ball, so on attack, the first thing you're trying to do, you're trying to score. you're trying to invade the territory of your opponent, and you're trying to keep possession. When you don't have the ball, so non-ball possession, you've of course been trying to stop your opponent from scoring, you're trying to stop them or prevent them from invading your territory, and you're trying to get possession. What we're going to try and do as we go through this is keep those principles absolutely at the forefront of what we do. They're like I say, the foundation, the bedrock. So everything else that we do from this builds on this idea. Now, as we go through this, we'll talk a little bit more, and I'm conscious, I just look down at where my head is here. I'm kind of in front of some words. I'm going to do a little bit of wiggling around as we talk here, but conscious that we can sometimes we can put different emphasis on different parts of this. So we may, of course, say that we value keeping possession first and foremost before invading territory. We may flip things around and use language and different ideas to communicate those in different ways to our players. But at the heart of it is this idea: in possession, we want to score, we want to invade territory, and we want to keep possession. So let's kick us off with a bit of discussion before we dive into what principles of play are in a broader level and how they can inform our coaching. In the breakout room now, we're going to put about 4 or 5 in each room. So hopefully room for healthy discussion over the next 8 to 10 minutes. But considering these 2 questions, what are principles of play? What do they mean to you? So what are principles of play? What do they mean to you? And the second one, how are they different to tactics? What are principles of play and how are they different to tactics? And just bear with me a second whilst I open up the breakout rooms. Perfect. They are open now. At 8 minutes, I'll close the room. So after 9 minutes, you'll get kicked out. Perfect. I think we've got everyone back in here. So she's B prime, don't worry. So this wasn't a cold call for everyone who's nervous about the next time. So Meg, do you want to share a little bit about this conversation in your room as relates to these questions?
Sure. So our group discussed that principles of play were kind of like your methodology for, if you're on attack or defense, what you wanted that to look like, what you're going to employ, and then the tactics were how you make those principles happen.
Cool. Excellent. Anyone got a major, I guess, a difference of opinion that was discussed in their room? Okay. Sounds like we may all be on a similar page here. So this is a definition of principles of play. So tools to establish team intentions and individual player objectives. So really a kind of common language to help us think about, talk about, and then act collectively within the game. So really, it's about guiding player decision-making, tools to help them make effective decisions on the field. And I know some of you heard me use this phrase before, stolen from Ollie Logan from British Swimming, but this idea that they are handrails, not handcuffs. So they guide us on the way, but they have room for maneuver. They don't hold us into a single place or force us into one particular solution. Tactics, I agree, would then be the how that we choose to bring these principles to life. How do we distribute our players across the field in order to effectively utilize our principles of play in the game to be successful? And we've all been there at times when we've modified our tactics to try and nullify a strength of an opponent, but maybe that tactic doesn't play into our core principles of play and actually fails because of that, versus sticking to our principles, sticking to tactics that bring those principles to life, and being able to play our version of the game. So principles of play at the core of invasion games, but for us as coaches, we decide where we want to put the emphasis, what we choose to omit or leave out, and how we choose to communicate our principles of play. And really that communication is perhaps the key bit. This is about driving towards a vision of how we see the game, the way we like to see it play. And perhaps a useful question to keep in the back of our mind as we go through this is, what's the gap between the game, the principles describe, or your principles describe, and the game you see in your mind's eye? The vision of the game that you have, the bit that you love, we all have that kind of, I guess, taste in terms of our taste, aesthetics, how we like to see the game played. What's the gap between the principles we're using and the game we actually the version of the game we actually love? A useful reflective question as we go forward. So there's examples of principles of play out there from various governing bodies. So of course, we've got the USA Way, the principles of play there. Bottom right, we've got the Belgian compass, and on the left, we've got the Kookaburras, the Australian way of playing. We could say that the USA and the Belgian ones are more, I guess, tactical principle focused. They're more focused on actual elements, the actions that players would make in relation to defenders or each other, versus the Australian one is maybe more, I think, would fit Ali McAvoy, who was in the room I popped into, talking about principles of players' core values that inform our actions on the field. And perhaps the Australian one would be more aligned that way. But when we think about principles of play, it might be helpful to adopt this game model approach to putting our principles in. So thinking about what are our principles with ball possession, without ball possession, when we win the ball, and when we lose the ball. And if we can have a clear picture of what those principles are across those 4 phases, we'll be in a pretty good place to be able to communicate our message to the players we're working with. The one phase of the game which is separate from this, which isn't mentioned here, but if we're building a full game model to work with our team, of course, there'd be a set piece phase as well, which would include corners, strokes, and shootouts, and how we would go about approaching those. We're not going to touch on that today. So the headline, the big ticket item to go back to those foundations of invasion games, with ball possession, is we want to play forward and score. That's the headline, play forward and score. And the first principle in possession would be penetrate or penetration. And we'll see this in the USA Way. You see it in the Belgian compass. In the USA Way, it's go forward, keep the opponent on the back foot and in defensive mode. In the Belgian compass, it's about break the line. At the heart of that is this idea that we want to play forward and score. We want to penetrate the opposition. That's at the foundation of it. So everything else we do, all the other principles that fall out in terms of attack, are in relation to creating the ability to go forward. So if we look at, as we watch these clips, and hopefully this is playing smoothly, penetration is anything that moves the ball forward, either by moving the ball, so passing, or as in this example, moving with the ball or dribbling. So we need to invade the opponent's territory, and to do that, we need to break lines or we need to penetrate. As I said previously, all of the attacking principles are in support of this. Simple, easy, go. Oh, so the headline for when we don't have the ball, building on those core principles, is protect the goal and get the ball back. Protect the ball and get the ball back. And right from the start, this idea of language is really important, because of course, as coaches, we could communicate our priorities a little differently by maybe saying we want to get the ball back and protect our goal. And that subtle difference in terms of prioritization here may inform the principles that exist within this. But the headline, protect the goal and get the ball back. In transition, the principles will be a ball win, we want to attack quickly. And when we lose the ball, we want to slow the attack down. They're our headline pieces, or at least they are within these core principles of invasion games. Now, thinking of language is really powerful here as we think about how we embed our ideas with the team. The language we use in this workshop, in terms of the information shared, is deliberately neutral, in the sense that it's up to us as coaches in terms of how we take these principles and apply them in our context, and how much emphasis we want to put on them, and how we want to bring that vision to life. So we can have the same principles with different emphasis by considering the language that we use to communicate them. And this great little book is worth checking out if you're interested in finding out more about this. It's made to stick. So a sticky idea is understood. It's something it's remembered, it changes something. Sticky idea is understood, it's remembered, it changes something. And the framework, the success framework they put forward in this book is based around this idea that we have simple, unexpected, concrete, credible, emotional stories that help sell our image or make our idea, make our principles sticky with the group we're working with. So as an example, the headline for ball win, when we look at our neutral language, is about attack quickly. The headline for ball win in the USA way is quick strike. Same thing, different language. Attack quickly, quick strike. Dissect the opponent with ruthless efficiency is the tagline for that. So attack quickly, quick strike. Which one of those is more sticky? Which one of those conveys the kind of message we want to get across the team in terms of the intensity, the tempo, the intent at that moment in time? So we're going to jump back into our breakout rooms really quickly, a little shorter this time, just under 5 minutes. If these are the neutral headlines for phases, what would your headlines be? What do you want your team to do in each phase? What is the headline? What type of message are you trying to convey? Cool. So what are your headlines for each phase? What message are you trying to convey? And I'll open those rooms up and we'll just do 5 minutes in there this time. Going to be, there's a big difference between we want to play forward and score and we want to keep the ball as our core message. And neither is right or wrong, but it needs to fit with how we see the game and the kind of hockey we want our teams to be playing. So I did say that for this workshop, we're looking at kind of these general invasion game principles, but there are a couple of field hockey specific principles that will be kind of remiss not to include right now because of the asymmetrical nature of the game. Obviously, all of these principles could be applied playing soccer, but of course in soccer, it's pretty symmetrical. You're left-footed, right-footed, play with both feet, etc. For us, we're all confined to playing with our left hand at the top of the stick. So we have this natural asymmetry in the game, which would mean that these kind of two principles that kind of go together, one in possession, one without the ball. But in possession, this idea we want to exploit the left foot, and out of possession, we want to protect our left foot. And these are certainly two ideas that are really exaggerated through the indoor game, as you said at the start, because of that fact that we need to keep the ball on the ground. And a really nice transition to outdoors is getting players to take this principle, which will give them a lot of success indoor, and be able to take it into the outdoor game as well. Simply being able to play through the defender's left foot repeatedly is one of those things that we need players not to get bored with, to understand the value of it. Of course, as defenders know you want to play down their left foot, we have to use some disguise, some deception to be able to exploit it. But there's a natural factor in our asymmetrical game that playing through the left foot is going to give us success more often. And even in these critical circumstances, so there's 12 seconds to go, and this is the European Championship final, 2-2, Germany, Poland. And simply rolling to exploit the left foot of the defender is enough. And I know the umpire here says play on and ends the game. But if you didn't watch this game, after about 10 seconds, they decide this is a penalty corner. And Germany, of course, scored a penalty corner, and Germany become European champions. But that simple principle of exploit the left foot is really a cool one, in the sense it's a bit like if we think of a murmuration of starlings, where there's loads of individual starlings together in a flock, but they make something much bigger when they fly together in the sky. And they just have the simple rule of follow the bird in front of you. That's the simple rule of thumb that they're using there, and that creates these beautiful things you would associate with a sunset, perhaps out in the countryside. This simple principle of exploit the left foot is similar to that. Very simple, one instruction, but it changes everything in terms of how we orientate ourselves in relation to the defender when we're on the ball, where we look to carry, where our teammates look to support us in relation to that defender as well. So it's one principle that has massive effects in terms of how we play the game. On the flip side, indoors, a game that really emphasizes protecting your left foot. And this is a good example here of using a tactic to bring a principle to life. So we can see here, if I just pause for a sec, that Austria are playing a slant right press. So there's a little bit of evidence of this at NITs, the U19s at the weekend, which is great to see. So we got the two forwards defending the heart of the field, closing these right boards, and our midfielder dropping back and playing on the right boards. So the whole intent here is that we close the right side of the court and get them to play to the left. And this is based around the idea, the principle being protect your left foot. Collectively, we can use a tactic such as the slant right to help us bring that to life. Cool. So there are field hockey specific principles. Let's dive into the rest of them here. So from the attacking perspective in ball possession, we've got these 5 principles of play. So penetrate, we've already explored, and then we've got be creative, use movement, support the play, and create space. Simple principles of play from which we can build our game model from. And I'm conscious a little bit that the good practice here would be to play video clips through twice, and you get a chance to watch it, and then we talk about it. But in the interests of time, they're all annotated already, so I'm going to talk through them as we play, and hopefully the annotations help guide our attention as we go. And like I said, all the video will be available afterwards for you anyway. So, like I said, all of these are in service of penetrates. The first one would be creative. So use surprise, deception, fake a pass to make a pass, to find a way to go forward. In this case, the little backhand pass to get around the corner. Second one would be use movement. In this example, against a man-to-man press, we're going to see the right back in a second lead up the field, taking their defender with them, creating space for the Belgians to play down the right boards into the space they vacated and play forward. So using movements against a man-to-man like that. The next principle would be, or the next 2 would be create space and support. So create space would be about playing with height and width. In this case, the pause wasn't quite long enough. In this case, the height up the court in the corner that we can't see forces the right back to play deeper, creating the gap in between the right forward and the forward in which they can play to the inside. So creating space, so playing with width and stretch, creates gaps through which we can play through, or pockets which we can play into. The next principle on here would be support. So you'll notice, and of course, the classic example here, we're showing the international, the best European teams showcasing these principles. So they're doing them well. But if we could picture what it might look like if we didn't, have the principle of support, is we might see this player over in this corner. So we've created space, we've got width and stretch, but we don't have any support because we're spread out all across the field. So in indoor, we'll often see the triangle from this player at the top on the hotspot, top of the circle, and the player in the corner, making sure that the ball carrier has multiple passing options. So create space and support would be 2 principles of play in action there. And playing down the left foot proves to be effective once again. As we keep things rolling here, in this next one, similar, we're going to see create space, spread out, big space, across the field, up the court. And support. So once again, we see those sideline triangles being created by the attacking team. So we are supporting the ball carrier as opposed to leaving them isolated. And in the final clip, and I apologize, I don't know why these transitions are so funky, but all of the principles are in action here. So in this case, one of the principles is movement. So now it's movement against the zone. So we pass and reposition. That's a different question of the pressing forward in their zone starts to open up gaps. Next principle, support. Does the ball carrier have multiple passing options? In this case, yes. Because of the movement of both the players off the ball, we're going to exploit this player's left foot, and we're going to do it in a creative way with some deception where we're going to look like we're passing here, but we're passing to the inside. We've got penetration on the ball carrying, so willingness to go forward, and we've got stretch ahead of the ball, so making space for that ball carrier to operate. So they'd be our core principles in attack, or the core principles of invasion games in attack, should I say. When we lose the ball, so we've gone from attack, we've now lost the ball, slowed the attack down. The two principles to, excuse me, let me go back. The two principles to focus on would be chase back. So we, in the USA way, that'd be tackle back. Within the 6-second regain would be the principle here. Let's slow the attack down, get it back. Chase back and drop off. Chase back and drop off would be the two principles to look at here. So there's your turnover. We see that instant response. We're going to chase back, and we're going to see the defender below the ball drop, cutting off passing lanes and not letting the player get beat. Like I say, we're watching the best do this here, but we can all picture a scenario where if we don't have the principle of drop or the intent to slow the attack down here, we can actually inadvertently accelerate the attack as a defensive team. By if this defender here, so the player below the ball, decides that they need to jump to the ball to put pressure on. So rather than dropping and helping slow the attack down because they know that their teammates are chasing back, if we jump to the ball, we help accelerate the attack, and we've done the exact opposite of what we'd intended to do in the first place. Okay, so we've got our tackle back, we drop, made our double team, and we're in a pretty good place. Here, there's our turnover, a little bit of hand waving, but we do get our chase back. And now we see the two defenders drop, 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 keep the game in front of them. We get the ball where we want it in the corner, and we're in a good place. Now, this now sets up from we've lost the ball. So we've transitioned, we've lost the ball, we've done our job, we've slowed the attack down. Now we're into a pure non-ball possession phase, and we can start to look at the first principle of non-ball possession, which I heard mentioned in one of the breakout rooms. And this first principle of non-ball possession would be delay. Stop them playing forward. And for us, we typically might talk about that in terms of defending the line to goal. So here we see that strike at the top there. This was also our chase back player in the last clip. Defending the line to goal. Being patient, not letting them play forward, again, across, defend the line to goal. And sometimes we don't need too many principles in attack when they pass it over that forehand, and we can just go. Okay? So when we look at this non-ball possession now, so protect the goal and get it back, we've just seen that principle of delay or stop them going forward. The other principles we're going to look at is press, cover, be compact, and be connected. So once we've delayed them, we stop them going forward, we can start to think about how we press. So pressing would be about putting pressure, making the players on the ball make decisions under pressure, but also shaping, to use the USA way phrase, or influencing their direction of play. So in this first example, we see the Austrian player closing their left foot and starting to shape the play back over to the forehand side of the Austrian team. So closing their left foot, knocking down the boards, back to the inside, and there's our turnover. So pressing, the tactic would be about where we actually want them to get to, but this idea of pressing would be the principle we'd be looking at. For the Spanish team, they like to do something a little bit different indoor against the back three here. So they're going to bring what in outdoor might be a wing press, so that opposite forward, now closing with their forehand to the outside and forcing play back out to these left boards. The defensive team's left boards, that is. So we delayed, we pressed. Now when we start to press, we've also got to provide cover. As we step out to press, cover would be about providing backup to the pressing player and putting ourselves in positions to intercept the pass as it is played through. So in this scenario, with this frontal pressure here, this forces a shallow pass off the boards, allowing the left back to step up in a cover position and pick up the pieces. Likewise, we might also see this in a slightly different press. So this is Austria playing what I would call an Austria press, protecting the left foot of the pressing player with our cover player to be able to win the ball in midfield. Next up, we've got this idea that we want to be compact. And compact is really a Goldilocks principle. And so we don't want to be so wide that they can play to the inside. We don't want to play so narrow that it can play around the outside. So it's that continual positioning, repositioning to remain compact as a group. In this scenario, making sure it's a really tight space for the players at the back of the zone to be able to defend. For the intercept and that cover position behind. And finally, we want to make sure if we've got all of this stuff in place, we want to make sure that we have connection. And connection is this idea, if you go, we go. So if you go to press, we go with you. So in this scenario, this is a very similar press to the last clip, this Austrian press. So 2 forwards defending the inside, 2 midfielders defending the outside, cover player in behind. But when the forwards start to step, they now make these boards shallow on the outside, so the midfielders can step behind. And in indoors, we know the ball being passed off the end line is a win in the press. So there'd be our principles of play, or our non-ball possession principles of play. Finally, when we win the ball, we want to attack quickly, or in the USA way, play quick strike. And our 2 principles there would be play to the middle and get ahead. Play to the middle and get ahead. And that's also a bit of the men's national team here. So win the ball. This is a high energy moment of the game. We have to put energy into the game. We're going to see get ahead on the right side. We're going to see playing off the board to the middle of the court. Now, again, this is where asymmetry comes in to play a little bit. It's not always about going to the middle. Sometimes the right is where it's at. But fundamentally, typically, we want to get the ball off the boards. If we're playing outdoor, get it off the sidelines, get it to the heart of the field. That's a decent ball win goal. Similarly, so this is women's Bundesliga video from Germany now. There's our ball win. We're going to see the player at the top of the screen get ahead, carry off the left boards, get it to the heart of the field. Penalty corner. So high energy actions. And really, this is all about, we want to attack quickly because there's no defensive structure for the opponent team that's just been attacking. So here we have the option potentially to play to the heart, but we play through the heart of the field, so that asymmetrical thing to the right. We've got that get ahead, we've got early stretch in the corner, and we've got willingness for the next layer to get ahead and join as well. Great counter-attack goal for the Austrians in there. Okay, so they'd be our principles of play when we win the ball. So there's our overview. Simple principles of play embedded in this idea of invasion games, the absolute core of those foundation ideas that came out of that game categorization. And now when we build our game model, our principles of play, or we review our principles of play, we can do so with this kind of solid foundation behind it. Are the things we're doing built upon things that have been proven to work through invasion games that have been played for an extended period of time? Or are we picking and choosing things that maybe come from elsewhere? So good food for thought, if nothing else. And I'm a little conscious of time as we get to the end of the video there. So Becca, what are we thinking? Are we able to do a last little breakout room, or should we do this as a reflection task to finish the last one?
It's up to you. I mean, I think we have we can go another 5 or so minutes if you want to do a little breakout room for reflection. Sure.
Cool. Should we do that?
Yeah, go ahead.
Anne, I can see you, Anne. You're on screen up there. Give us a thumbs up if you want to do a little breakout room to wrap things up. Okay, perfect. Excellent. So the final breakout room, we're just 5 minutes in here. This is our food for thought. This is the idea that's been put forward today, these principles. But the final thing to consider is, what are your principles of play? So if you have them established already, what would they be? If you don't, pick one from today. Pick one of your principles to discuss and consider the following questions. What are the critical skills associated with that principle? So we'd often talk about core skills, but certain principles of play, playing in a certain way, might emphasize certain skills or prioritize certain skills over Becca, I can hang out for 5 minutes or so longer as well if people want to, if people have questions and stuff. So
Okay, sounds good.
I'll just wrap up quickly and then
Sounds
those
good.
people who want to can jump off.
Okay.
Okay, welcome back, everyone. Bit of a brief reflection conversation, but some good conversation nonetheless as I popped around. This is the overview. These are the principles, like I say, they're built upon this kind of core foundation of invasion games. We could go and coach soccer with these. We could go and coach lacrosse with these. We can use them to inform our principles of play, how we use them with our group, and making sure essentially that what we are doing is built upon solid foundations as opposed to maybe just maybe a collection of ideas that have come from various different points at various different times. So using this as a reflective tool, if we already have our principles, using it maybe as a starting point, if we're just starting to think about what our principles may be. As I just said to Becca, I can hang out for another 5 minutes or so if people want to ask questions or whatever. But I did mention at the top end that those who want more specific indoor content, tactical, technical, etc., from some of the best in the world, I just put the link in the chat. So you can get access to indoor lessons from the top via the Path website and listen to these folks speak with a lot more intelligence about the indoor game than I can when it comes to the specifics. I know some people on this call were part of that previously, and it was, yeah, Addy especially was absolutely superb with his information he shared. If you want to get in touch, if you drop me an email, there's the website, there's the social. I saw this kind of design somewhere on LinkedIn. I thought it looked kind of cool to do it this way, so stole it. So yeah, get in touch if you have any questions or you just want to chat through anything or explore what Path may have to offer. But yeah, I can hang out now if anyone has any questions or just wants to catch up for 5 minutes before we say goodbye.
Thank you, Phil. Really appreciate your expertise. Again, I'll leave it open so anyone who wants to talk to Phil can go ahead. And Phil, since you're co-host, I'm going to leave you on it so that you can have any conversations that anybody wants to have. But thank you so much, Phil. That was amazing. You're very good at what you do. So we really appreciate you giving us our time. Everybody have a good evening or afternoon, depending on where you are. Good night.